Support the channel by liking and subscribing. It helps me tell more touching stories. He was just delivering documents until he mentioned something that made the CEO's blood run cold. What happened next shocked the entire company. Tuesday morning at Meridian Financial, 11th floor. The kind of place where coffee costs $8 and everyone walks like they're late for something important. Marble floors that echo with the click of designer heels, floor-to-ceiling windows that make the city look like a miniature model, and the subtle hum of ambition wrapped in expensive suits. Marcus Chen pushed his delivery cart through the glass doors, wheels squeaking slightly against the polished stone. 23 years old, community college dropout, drove a beat-up Honda with 200,000 miles, a cracked windshield, and a dream of maybe someday starting his own logistics business. His uniform was clean but worn, the fabric soft from too many washes, and his name tag slightly crooked no matter how many times he straightened it. He'd been running documents between downtown offices for 8 months. Same routes, same faces, same polite nods from receptionists who never quite made eye contact. Just another invisible service worker keeping the corporate machine running, moving between worlds he wasn't supposed to be part of. The thing about being invisible is that you see everything. Marcus had learned to read rooms in seconds, gauge moods from posture, understand company dynamics from overheard conversations in elevators. He noticed things. Supply chain inefficiencies when law firms ordered too many copies of contracts that would be amended. Market trends visible in the volume of patent applications. Competitive intelligence scattered across delivery manifests that told stories no one else was reading. "Delivery for Sarah Martinez, strategic planning," he said to the receptionist, a woman with perfect nails painted corporate beige, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her nameplate read Jennifer, but in 8 months, she'd never asked his name. "Conference room C," she pointed, without looking up from her computer screen. There in the quarterly review. Marcus had delivered to enough quarterly reviews to know the mood before he opened the door. The tension was always the same, a mixture of caffeine, anxiety, and the particular brand of stress that came from explaining why numbers weren't what they were supposed to be. He knocked twice, heard a muffled, "Come in," and stepped inside. 12 people around a mahogany table that probably cost more than his car, laptops open like shields, charts projected on the wall in colors that tried to make disappointing data look optimistic. The air thick with tension, expensive cologne, and the particular scent of frustration that came from meetings that should have ended an hour ago. "Documents from Davidson and Associates," Marcus said, placing the sealed envelope near the head of the table where a silver-haired man in a navy suit sat scrolling through his phone with the practiced indifference of someone who'd heard too many presentations. That was supposed to be it. Drop off, leave, drive to the next stop on his route, pick up lunch from the Korean place that knew his order, listen to podcasts about business strategy while stuck in traffic, deliver to 3 more offices before the end of his shift. Simple, predictable, invisible. But as Marcus turned to go, something on the wall display caught his eye. A market penetration chart with numbers that didn't add up. Not just slightly off, but fundamentally wrong in a way that would cost serious money if anyone acted on the data. He paused at the door, hand on the handle. His uncle's voice echoed in his head from when he'd worked summers at the moving company. "Keep your mouth shut, do your job, collect your paycheck." But those numbers. The silver-haired man, David Holloway, CEO according to the nameplate, glanced up from his phone. Something else? Marcus hesitated. 8 months of staying invisible, keeping his observations to himself, biting his tongue when he saw obvious mistakes. But those numbers were going to hurt people, real people who trusted this company with their financial future. "Sorry, sir, it's just..." He gestured toward the chart, then immediately regretted it. That southeast expansion projection. The demographic data looks off. The room went quiet. 12 pairs of eyes turned toward him, like he'd just announced the building was on fire. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Someone's pen stopped clicking. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. Holloway raised an eyebrow, the kind of look that could end careers or start them. "Excuse me?" Marcus felt his face flush, heat creeping up his neck. "The population density metrics for Atlanta and Charlotte." They're showing household income averages from 2019. Post-pandemic migration patterns shifted everything. Your target demographic moved about 15 miles west in both markets. A woman at the far end of the table, Sarah Martinez, according to the nameplate VP of Strategic Planning, leaned forward. Her blazer was wrinkle-free, her hair perfectly styled, everything about her screaming competence and authority. How would you possibly know that? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Marcus shifted the empty cart handle between his hands, the metal warm from his grip. I deliver to census offices, real estate firms, demographic research companies. You see the same reports enough times, patterns start jumping out. A man in wire-rimmed glasses and a tie that probably cost more than Marcus made in a week scoffed quietly. You see patterns in census data? Not just census data, Marcus said, his voice steadier now. Property tax assessments, school enrollment reports, retail location analyses. When you're moving documents between all these different firms, you start to see how the pieces fit together. Holloway set down his phone completely, giving Marcus his full attention for the first time. What kind of patterns? Marcus took a breath. Once he started talking, there was no going back to being invisible. Well, your projected customer base in those markets, about 60% of them don't live where you think they do anymore. The pandemic changed everything. Remote work meant people could move further out for bigger houses, better schools, lower cost of living. And the ones who stayed in the urban core? Their income profiles changed. Some lost jobs, others got promoted because they were the ones who stayed. Sarah Martinez was typing on her laptop now, fingers flying across the keyboard. Can you be more specific? The suburban corridors west of both cities saw massive influxes. Families with kids, dual-income households, people in their 30s and 40s who were renting in the city but could suddenly afford to buy in the suburbs. They're not less valuable customers. They're actually more likely to need long-term financial planning because they're building equity, starting families, thinking about college funds. The room was completely still now. Even the person who'd been clicking their pen had stopped. Meanwhile, Marcus continued, warming to the subject, you're targeting the old urban demographics that are now either priced out or aged out. It's like, imagine you're selling ice cream, but you set up shop where the kids used to play before they built the new playground across town. A woman with red hair and a legal pad covered in notes spoke up. Do you have data to support this? Not with me, but I could get it. I know which firms track that information. Residential Real Estate Analytics does quarterly migration reports. Morrison Demographics tracks income shifts by zip code. I delivered their Q3 analysis to 4 different companies last month. Holloway glanced at Sarah, then back at Marcus. Something had shifted in his expression. What's your name? Marcus Chen. Marcus, would you mind staying for a few more minutes? The next 40 minutes changed everything. Marcus found himself seated at the conference table, the leather chair soft and unfamiliar, sketching demographic shifts on a whiteboard with markers that cost more than his lunch budget. He explained supply chain inefficiencies he'd noticed, pointed out competitor movements he'd observed while delivering to their offices, described market gaps that were invisible from inside the corporate tower, but obvious from the delivery routes that connected all the dots. You're telling us, said the man with wire-rimmed glasses, Robert Kim, according to his introduction, that our expansion strategy is targeting empty neighborhoods. Not empty, Marcus corrected, capping the marker and turning back to the table. Just not full of the people you're trying to reach. Your strategy assumes the same customer base that existed 3 years ago. But they moved, and the people who replaced them have different needs, different income levels, different financial priorities. Sarah Martinez had filled 3 pages with notes. These patterns you're describing, they would explain why our Atlanta pilot program is underperforming by 30%. And why Charlotte keeps requesting services we don't offer, added Robert. What kind of services? Marcus asked. College savings plans, first-time homebuyer consultations, family financial planning. We've been pushing retirement portfolios and investment strategies for people who are trying to figure out how to afford preschool. Marcus nodded, That makes sense. The demographic that moved to those areas is younger, family-focused. They're not thinking about retirement yet. They're thinking about surviving the next 18 years of raising kids. Holloway leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus with the intensity of someone seeing a puzzle piece click into place. How long have you been doing delivery work? 8:36. 8 months here, but I've been in logistics since high school. Started with my uncle's moving company when I was 16. You learn to see systems, patterns, inefficiencies. Moving teaches you that everything is connected to everything else. College? 2 years at community college. Business and economics. Had to drop out when my mom got sick. Cancer. Someone had to manage her care, deal with insurance, make sure she got to appointments. The room felt different now. Lighter somehow, like a problem had been solved that no one knew existed. But also heavier, weighted with the realization of how much they'd been missing. Marcus, Holloway said slowly, what do you know about our competitor analysis process? Marcus shifted in his chair. Honestly, not much about your specific process, but I see a lot of their documents too. Patent filings, market research requests, vendor contracts. You guys are fighting over the same old territory while 3 smaller companies are quietly eating your lunch in the spaces you're ignoring. Silence again. But not the uncomfortable kind, the thinking kind. The kind that happened when smart people realized they'd been looking at a problem upside down. Which companies? Sarah asked. Pinnacle Financial Group has been filing permits for suburban office locations in exactly the areas where your target demographic actually moved. Guardian Wealth Management just hired 12 advisors who specialize in young family financial planning. And Horizon Financial? They're launching a mobile service that comes to clients' homes instead of making them drive downtown. Robert Kim was frantically taking notes now. How do you know all this? I deliver their permits to city planning offices. I pick up their hiring paperwork from HR firms. I see their marketing materials go to printing companies. When you're moving documents all day, you start to see the bigger picture that everyone else is working on, one piece at a time. Holloway stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Sarah, what would it cost us to pivot our Southeast strategy based on this information? Less than what we're about to lose if we keep targeting the wrong demographics, she replied without hesitation. Robert, how quickly could we get verification on these migration patterns? If Marcus can point us to the right data sources, a week, maybe less. Holloway turned back to the table. Marcus, would you be interested in consulting with us? Officially? Marcus blinked. The word consulting felt foreign in his mouth before he even spoke it. I don't have credentials for that kind of work. You have something better, Holloway said, returning to his seat. You have visibility. You see patterns because you're moving between all the puzzle pieces while we're stuck looking at one corner of the picture. The meeting ended with Marcus's phone number in 4 different phones and a promise to call him within 48 hours. As he wheeled his cart out of the conference room, he caught fragments of excited conversation behind him, voices that sounded energized for the first time since he'd walked in. He left the building in a daze, loaded his cart into the Honda, and sat in the parking garage for 15 minutes trying to process what had just happened. His hands were shaking slightly, from adrenaline, from disbelief, from the terrifying possibility that his life might be about to change in ways he'd never imagined. His phone buzzed. Text from his mom. How's work, honey? Doctor says I'm doing great. Thinking of you. He stared at the message for a long moment. His mother, who'd fought cancer while he fought to keep them both afloat financially. Who'd encouraged him to go back to school someday, finish his degree, reach for something bigger. Who'd never made him feel guilty for dropping out to take care of her. He typed back, Different today, Mom. Really different. I'll call you tonight and explain everything. What Marcus didn't know was that his 40-minute conversation had triggered the biggest strategy pivot in Meridian Financial's history. And David Holloway couldn't stop thinking about what else they might be missing. That night, Holloway sat in his home office with a glass of wine and a legal pad, writing down every assumption his company had made about their market, their customers, their competition. Assumptions that had gone unchallenged because everyone in the boardroom saw the same data, attended the same conferences, read the same reports, lived in the same neighborhoods, shopped at the same stores. They had built an echo chamber without realizing it. A beautiful, expensive, well-educated echo chamber that was slowly becoming irrelevant to the real world outside their windows. His wife found him there at midnight, still writing. "Big day?" she asked, settling into the chair across from his desk. "A delivery guy just schooled our entire strategic planning department," he said, looking up from his notes. "And he was right about everything." "Is that good or bad?" "Honestly, I think it might be the best thing that's happened to this company in years." By Thursday, Sarah Martinez had pulled 3 months of performance data that confirmed every one of Marcus's observations. Their southeast expansion wasn't just underperforming. It was hemorrhaging money in exactly the ways he'd predicted, to exactly the demographic groups he'd said they were missing. The numbers were brutal and beautiful in their clarity. Atlanta, 32% below projections. Charlotte, 28% below projections. Customer acquisition costs, 40% higher than modeled. Customer retention, 23% lower than industry average. But when Sarah cross-referenced the data with the migration patterns Marcus had described, everything clicked into place. They weren't failing because they were bad at their jobs. They were failing because they were excellent at solving the wrong problem. Friday morning, Marcus's phone rang while he was loading his cart for another day of deliveries. "Marcus, this is David Holloway. Are you free for lunch?" They met at Chen's Garden, a small family-owned restaurant 6 blocks from the corporate district, the kind of place where the owner knew everyone's order and the portions were generous without being pretentious. Holloway arrived first, studying the menu like he was preparing for a board meeting. "This your usual spot?" he asked when Marcus slid into the booth across from him. "My grandmother's place, actually. Well, not technically hers, but the Chen family that owns it. No relation. They've been feeding me since I was 12. Mrs. Chen always makes sure I eat vegetables." Holloway smiled. Smart woman. They ordered like normal people. No power lunch performances, no strategic menu choices, just 2 guys figuring out what sounded good. But when the food arrived, Holloway got serious. "I've been thinking about our conversation," he said, picking up his chopsticks with surprising competence. "About visibility and patterns." Marcus nodded, still not quite believing he was sitting across from a man whose company he'd only heard about in financial news that played in office building elevators. "Here's what I realized," Holloway continued. "We spend millions on market research, but all our researchers come from the same background, same schools, same zip codes, same assumptions about how the world works. You see things we miss because you're actually in the field, touching the real data flow, talking to the people who generate the information we analyze." "It's just observation," Marcus said, attempting humility. "No, it's intelligence. Applied intelligence. And I want to offer you a position." Marcus set down his chopsticks. "What kind of position?" "Strategic advisor. You'd work directly with our planning team, help us see blind spots, challenge our assumptions, keep us connected to what's actually happening in the markets we serve. I don't have an MBA. I don't care. I have 12 people with MBAs who missed what you caught in 30 seconds. Education is valuable, but perspective might be more valuable." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, watching steam rise from his soup. What would that mean exactly? "It means you'd have a voice in major decisions. It means when we're planning expansion or analyzing markets, your perspective would be part of the conversation. Real input, not just consultation. A seat at the table where decisions get made. That sounds like—" Marcus paused, trying to find the right words. "That sounds like more responsibility than I've ever had. Are you ready for it?" Marcus thought about his delivery routes, his beat-up Honda, the community college degree he'd never finished. Then he thought about the patterns he saw every day that no one else seemed to notice, the connections that seemed obvious to him but invisible to everyone else. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think I am." "There's something else," Holloway added, signaling for the check. "This isn't charity. We're not doing this to feel good about ourselves. We're doing this because you're exactly what we need, but it's going to be challenging. Some people won't understand how you got there. Some people might resent it. Marcus nodded. I've been underestimated my whole life. I can handle being overestimated for a while. But what happened next would surprise even Marcus. Within a month, Marcus had identified 7 major market miscalculations that were costing Meridian millions. His insights led to a complete restructuring of their expansion strategy, including the painful decision to close 2 underperforming locations and redirect resources to markets they'd previously ignored. The Atlanta office was relocated 15 miles west, into the heart of the suburban corridor where their actual customers lived. Charlotte got a mobile service team that brought financial planning directly to young families' kitchen tables. Both markets turned profitable within 6 weeks. The board took notice. By month 3, Marcus was attending board meetings as a strategic consultant, not just presenting data, but helping shape long-term vision. His outsider perspective became invaluable. He asked questions that never occurred to industry veterans, challenged assumptions that had calcified into corporate gospel. Why are we trying to compete with established players in oversaturated markets when we could create new markets in underserved areas? He asked during one session, gesturing to a market analysis that showed intense competition for a shrinking customer base. Because that's how it's always been done, replied James Morrison, head of business development, a man who'd been with the company for 15 years and had the confidence of someone who'd never been fundamentally wrong about anything. But what if it's wrong? Marcus pressed. What if how it's always been done is exactly why smaller, more agile companies are outmaneuvering us? What if we're so focused on fighting yesterday's war that we're missing tomorrow's opportunities? The room was quiet. Not uncomfortable quiet, thinking quiet. The kind of quiet that happened when smart people realized they'd been looking at a familiar problem from the wrong angle. Give us an example, said Elizabeth Warren, not the senator, but Meridian's chief financial officer, a woman who could make numbers dance and had never met a spreadsheet she couldn't master. Financial wellness programs for gig economy workers, Marcus said without hesitation. Uber drivers, freelance graphic designers, people who piece together income from multiple sources. Traditional financial planning doesn't work for them because their income is irregular, but they still need to save for retirement, buy houses, plan for emergencies. Market size? Elizabeth asked, already thinking like a CFO. 36% of the workforce by 2027, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And nobody's serving them well because all the existing models assume steady paychecks and employer benefits. James Morrison was taking notes now, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by genuine interest. How would you structure something like that? Micro-investing tied to income spikes. When someone has a good week, the system automatically saves a percentage. Flexible goal setting that adapts to irregular income. Emergency fund algorithms that understand feast or famine cycles. Elizabeth was typing on her laptop. This is actually brilliant. We could partner with gig platforms, integrate directly with their payment systems. And, Marcus added, we'd be first to market in a segment that's growing faster than traditional employment. While everyone else fights over corporate executives and suburban families, we'd own the future of work. 6 months after delivering that envelope, Marcus Chen was offered a seat on Meridian Financial's board of directors. The youngest board member in company history, the first without an advanced degree, the first who'd learned about business from the ground up instead of from textbooks. The announcement sent ripples through the financial sector. Headlines like, "From delivery boy to boardroom" and "The Courier who rewrote corporate strategy" appeared in business publications. Some articles were respectful, others skeptical, a few openly hostile to the idea that someone without proper credentials could skip the normal hierarchy. Marcus read them all. The praise felt surreal. The criticism stung. But what surprised him most was how little either affected his daily work. He still saw patterns, still connected dots, still asked uncomfortable questions that needed to be asked. The difference was that now, when he spoke, people listened. His first official board meeting fell on a Tuesday morning in November. Marcus wore his first ever suit, navy blue, purchased with his first consultant paycheck, tailored to fit properly because Elizabeth Warren had told him that confidence started with looking the part. He still drove the Honda to work, still lived in the same apartment, Still ate lunch at Chen's garden, where Mrs. Chen now bragged to customers about her boy, who worked with important business people. The only real change was that his mother's medical bills were paid in full, and she was talking about taking a vacation for the first time in 5 years. At the board meeting, Marcus looked around the mahogany table at faces that had once seemed untouchable. Now they were colleagues, peers, partners in building something better. The intimidation had faded, replaced by the comfortable weight of responsibility and purpose. "So," said Holloway, opening the meeting with his usual efficiency, "Marcus, what patterns are you seeing this quarter?" Marcus smiled and opened his notebook, the same spiral-bound book he'd used for delivery routes, now filled with strategic insights, market observations, and questions that kept him awake at night, thinking about possibilities. "Well," he said, settling into his chair, "there's something interesting happening in the Pacific Northwest that I think we need to discuss. Also, I've been tracking some unusual patent filings that suggest our biggest competitor is about to make a move into cryptocurrency services." The room leaned in, because they'd learned that when Marcus Chen noticed something interesting, it was worth clearing the calendar and paying attention. "How interesting?" asked Sarah Martinez. "Potentially game-changing interesting," Marcus replied. "But also, if we move fast, we could get there first." And just like that, another pattern became visible. Another opportunity emerged from the vast network of information that flowed through the city every day, carried by people who were usually invisible but saw everything. Sometimes the most valuable insights come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the person who sees the whole picture is the one everyone overlooks. And sometimes the delivery guy knows more about your business than you do. Never underestimate the power of fresh eyes and an unfiltered perspective. The next breakthrough might walk through your door carrying an envelope and the solution you've been looking for all along. But more than that, remember that intelligence comes in many forms, wisdom grows in unexpected places, and the most important voice in the room might belong to someone who wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. Keep your eyes open. Listen to the people you usually ignore. And when someone offers you a perspective you've never considered, don't ask about their credentials. Ask about their insights. Because sometimes, being on the outside looking in is exactly what you need to see the truth.